Hey guys, so this is my wire feed welder. It's a Lincoln Electric Power MIG 140C, since it says it right there on it. Now I've had this welder for a while, but it's actually been broken. So the real problem here, if we open this up, move you guys in here a little closer. What happened here is that this little piece, this little guide in here, I snapped this off. So they put these little aluminum thumb screws right here. Now this is sets the guide in place. It's got the drive rollers in here, but this little piece, I had to get a brand new one because, just looking at this, guys, look, little tiny aluminum thumb screw. Doesn't that just tell you that you should just torque this just all the way? Some nice soft aluminum, just enough knurled section there to actually, just barely turn that with your fingers. So I don't know about you guys, but that just says to me, torque that as hard as possible. So when I put this in, I was just following natural instinct here, and I just torqued this down as hard as I possibly could. Just wrenched onto it, big pair of pliers in here to wrench on this. Sheared one of these off, had to get a new one. So I think I did a little bit too much torque. Probably could have handled just a little bit less, but ended up replacing this. Got a brand new one. We're set here. Got a new roll. Got my little adapter here, so my roll works. I got a new guide. I have new drive rollers in here. I actually connected on a new ground. If we look at the gun itself, it's got a new liner on the inside of it. Obviously you can't see it because it's inside. New nozzle, new contact tip. But dropping it right on the ground, it can stay right there for now. Got it all hooked back up. Everything looks good. Even got myself a brand new regulator for it. I may have dropped the regulator as well. Pretty good regulator. It does bounce on concrete, so it definitely survives. Alright guys, I'm going to take and pull this welder off the table, and then we'll lay out some parts and actually weld them together. I'll see you guys in just a second.
So guys, here is the upper frame to this little cart here. Just laying it out on the table. This right here is where the welder is actually going to sit. Right now I have it just sitting on the stool, which I would tell you really wasn't ideal. Wish I could have been able to roll it around. Now, I'm trying out these fireball squares, and let me tell you, I am in love with these. They make putting stuff together so quick and easy. I wish I bought a set years ago. It would be wonderful. Now, in using these, I've learned that I need to take and set my distance on my vice grips and kind of have that all preset before I start to build something. So I'm not holding something up in the air, grab a set of vice grips, and then the vice grips don't fit. So as you guys can see here, all I'm doing is just kind of adjusting and making sure that the vice grips are going to work properly. And then I'm going to take and set the other one. So took and tacked this up, did one corner. Again, those squares were just wonderful. Now, the question here, guys, is can you see what my mistake is right here? So, I didn't even notice it, didn't even think about it. I was just so impressed with how quick those joints were going together with those fireball squares that I wasn't even paying attention. I was just like, wow, that thing went right together. And then I realized my screw up. Nope, that was the wrong piece. I put the other end as the side there. I grabbed the grinder, knocked the tacks off. It worked out in the end, I guess. Kind of annoying, I wasn't paying attention though. There we go. Now right here, guys, I'm just making sure that everything's nice and square. And to do that, I'm measuring the diagonals. Because if the diagonals are the same, that means that all of its sides there, of that rectangle, are parallel. You know, the two opposite sides are parallel to each other, and therefore the adjacent sides are perpendicular, and everything's 90 degrees, everything looks good. So if you really want to check and make sure whatever you just built is proper and square, you measure the diagonals. As you can see, I used a clamp there to tweak it just a little bit. Once I had it all set and everything was 90 degrees, I took and threw some tacks here on the bottom just to hold everything in place, keep it from twisting on me. Now once this was together, there wasn't really any need not to, so I just took and welded the whole frame out. So, well, one of the reasons I did this here is I really wanted to take and test out this little wire feed welder, because I haven't used it in a while. And I'm gonna tell you, it is just great. I really enjoy using that little welder. It's that the gun on it is incredibly light. All the welders that we have at our shop are the big, heavy industrial versions, which are, you know, pretty common. But these little tiny ones, they're so light and wonderful to work with. Bit of a gap on this one, trying not to blow through it. So I was kind of pulsing a little bit, keep my heat down. And a bit of wire there. So I welded the corners here. I kind of wanted to see how well the welder would do with this, and it really did really well. I think because of the small wire, the size that I have in that gun, it kind of kept the puddle under control, didn't get too big, too hot, too fast. So I will say though, guys, I actually regretted welding these later. You'll see me grind them and try to bring it back in to where everything fits. So this is me not thinking about it and wanting to test out the welder. Well, guys, that is the one frame. So now let's take and start on the other frame. This one you can see I flipped the angle backwards, so it's actually open to the outside instead of the other one, which is kind of open to the end. This one's going to be the bottom where the casters are going to mount. So you can see I tacked it up here, and then we flip. The frame is welded together, and we're starting to put the legs on. Now again here, guys, I'm just setting my vice grips, so I'm not really clamping anything. I'm just adjusting everything so I can quickly grab one and then just use it. I don't have to take it and think about it, and I just know that they're going to fit. Now when I put these on, I actually was clamping both sides to make sure it pulled in all the way. But then I only left one clamp on there because it didn't really need any more than that to hold it still. So I clamped one side, then I clamped the other side, and it kind of sucked the two sides in to get it tight into that corner. And I kind of opened and closed them a bit to make sure it did. And then I took one clamp off. So one clamp was really holding it, and two clamps would have been too much. Now here's what I was talking about earlier. I ended up grinding those quarters, and I never should have welded them. There was no real need to weld them. But, oh well. Alright, now that the bottom of those legs there are clamped, I took and put the top piece in. And let me tell you, I was having a hard time with this as it kept moving around on me. But I eventually got it clamped up. Now the vertical pieces there are all the same length, so all I did was just took and lined up the very top of that frame with the legs, and then just clamped it on. Made sure it was nice and tight in the corners, and you can see I'm just tacking it together here real quick. Once I had it all tacked, I went through and welded it all together. Again, this welder worked really well. If you guys are curious, this is just regular old hard wire. So the wire that I'm running here is ER70S6. I don't know what brand. I've never been that worried about what brand it is, as long as it welds properly. And the gas that I'm running here is 100% CO2. Now I like running 100% CO2 mostly because it's really cheap. So I can have a cylinder that doesn't really cost me anything and lasts and lasts and lasts. And it's really pretty easy to work with. I know some people are like, well, the welds aren't as pretty, you know, if you don't mix any argon in there, but I've never really had any issue with that. So my welds lay in nice and pretty anyway, so I think they're perfectly fine. I welded the top, so now I'm going to weld the bottom. And there we go, guys. So this here is the internal frame. This is where I'm actually going to mount the gas cylinder. You guys will see how this goes together in just a minute. But basically I'm just making an eye-like shape. So I marked center on the shorter pieces, and then I'm just lining those up. And then I'm just grabbing one of these squares and making sure that we're square in the corner. So 90 degrees, and then that our mark is lined up right there with the top. And if everything looks good, I'm just throwing in a quick tack. And there it is together. So this is kind of give you guys an idea of how it goes in there. And you can see, I was thinking about how it goes in, and I was like, man, how am I going to figure that out? It took me longer than I care to admit to stick it in from the bottom and just make it work. I kept trying to move it in from the side. I kept trying to like adjust it, and it was just ridiculous. I should have just knocked it over and stuck it in from the bottom. So just tacking it in place. Now guys, this was a tremendous pain to weld, to try to get in there and get the welds where I wanted them to go. You can see my hand moving back and forth. I'm putting a little bit of a weave into it, widening out the puddle to make sure it ties the pieces together. And there we are. So I pulled it out front and painted it. This is a nice primer coat here. I used the Rust-Oleum Rusty Metal Primer. I just like the primer. There's no particular reason. And you can see I painted it pink. Now these plates on the bottom here, you guys can see I welded them on off camera. It wasn't super exciting. I drilled some holes in the plate. The holes are tapped. 3/8/16 thread, of course. I don't know why I would use anything else. And then I just welded them on. All of these casters here that I'm putting on are all swivel casters. So because they all swivel, it didn't really matter how the plates were put on. As long as all the plates were put on in the same plane, it didn't matter if they were slightly twisted or anything. So I really just set them on and welded them down. So the casters here, I'm putting these on with socket-headed cap screws. Really, I just thought they looked nice. So you can see I'm using an Allen key to actually put them on. And there we go. Got them all together. Now you guys can see it. I tell you guys, it was such a relief to put those casters on and all four wheels touch the ground. That is always the issue with casters. You weld them on and then only 3 out of the 4 touch the ground and you're like, ah, man. But nope, all 4 touch the ground. So now you guys can see how this gas cylinder fits in here. I'm just tightening it down. Put the welder on top. Now I'm just screwing on the hose. I am going to get a shorter hose here. This is kind of just what I had on hand. So much longer than it needs to be. You guys will see that in just a second. Now notice here, guys, that I have this gas cylinder twisted at 45 degrees, and I did that on purpose. Remember, this is a CO2 cylinder, and because of that, it has liquid in it. So I couldn't lay it on its side like I do with my argon cylinders. Oh yeah, way too much hose. And that cord was right in the way too. All right, well, here we are, guys. Spins around real easy, and there's my welding cart.